Hi everyone, my name is Jen and this is Bee's House of Plants, where I talk about all things houseplants and home design. Welcome back. So today I'm going to be making a video probably labeled something like top 5 intermediate plants for plant parents. And I'm making this video because I feel like there are a lot of videos and like listicles and articles about beginner plant recommendations, usually centered around like a similar groupings of plants, often labeled like unkillable plants. But I feel like there are a lot of people that are starting to get into, owning plants and really enjoying them in their homes. And after you've nailed down, like owning your Pothos and your ZZs, I feel like this is a cool grouping of plants to look into next. Especially if you're watching a lot of PLANTYs and there's all these YouTubers who own like really cool and really expensive plants, and you don't feel like you're ready to make commitments to those. These are plants that are probably easily accessible, easily found at your local garden centers or nurseries, and are still really cool. Alright, let's get into it. Okay, so the first plant I'm going to recommend to you is more actually like a family of plants, and that is Agonimas, also known as Chinese evergreen. So this specific variety of Agonima is known as the Agonima chocolate. It has this really cool camo pattern underneath with pink veining. This specific one might be a little bit hard to find. I just haven't seen it like online recently, but there are a lot of different varieties of Agonimas and they're all pretty simple to take care of. They're really flexible. If you can keep a Pothos alive, you can definitely keep an Agonima alive. So in terms of care instructions, for lighting, I would always recommend bright and direct light. However, most Agonimas will be able to tolerate a little bit of a lower light condition. Not necessarily low light, but maybe more like a medium light. My brother has his Agonima in a north-facing window, and it's actually doing much better than I thought it would be doing. I have mine under a grow light, and it definitely seems happy. The newest leaf is getting bigger, and there's a new leaf on the way, so they are a little bit flexible in terms of lighting conditions. And then for watering, I treat my Agonimas like how I treat a lot of my houseplants, in that I would let it dry probably halfway to 3/4 way before I water again. If you want to test that very accurately, you can always get a water meter. I'll link to the water meter I have down below, but I feel like once you start taking care of your plants, you'll be able to just feel it by like picking up the plant. Also, if you have a lot of issues figuring out when a plant is dry or not, I would recommend getting clear nursery pots, so that way you can like definitely tell for sure when your soil is dry. Agonimas actually are also quite flexible to water conditions. My brother is a chronic underwaterer, whereas I tend to overwater my plants, and his Agonima is doing great. I have actually ended up also converting my Agonima to LECA, and so far I think it's doing pretty well. I feel like LECA is something that I wouldn't necessarily recommend to, beginner / intermediate plant parents, just because plants come in soil, and so therefore there's always like a conversion process when you transfer it into LECA, but it is an option, and I do have videos about transferring plants into LECA if you are interested. In terms of fertilizing, I treat most of my houseplants the same, in that I am currently fertilizing spring, summer, and even a little bit into fall every other week with a fish fertilizer. All of my Chinese evergreens get tap water, and they're completely fine with it. Okay, so the next plant I'm going to recommend is the Peperomia obtusifolia. This is also known as the baby rubber tree, and if you look at its leaves, it's quite thick and very succulent like, and the reason I'm going to recommend this plant is because it is very vocal about its water needs. It's very easy to tell when it's thirsty, but it is not sensitive. Therefore, if you're a couple days late into watering your plant, it will likely bounce back. So the way you know if a peperomia needs to be watered is if you look at the leaves, if they're bendable, this one needs watering. So if you can bend it like this, it definitely needs water. If you look at the surface, it will focus, of the leaves, if I bend it and it wrinkles, can you tell? And it wrinkles, there you go, you can kind of see. And if it wrinkles like that, it definitely needs water. After a peperomia has been watered, it should be quite stiff and hard, and very hard for you to go like this. If you go like this with a peperomia that has been watered or doesn't currently need water, it should feel like it might snap. Okay, for lighting needs, I would recommend, once again, bright indirect lighting. However, I would caution you to never put this into direct lighting. It is a little bit sensitive to direct lighting. I definitely made this mistake before. So this variety is called the Peperomia obtusifolia marble, and has cool variegation. There's a kind without variegation, and then this is the Peperomia obtusifolia Golden Gate, where the outside is like a light cream color and the inside is green. But this one I put into direct lighting, and it definitely burned it. It looks like burnt, like how humans would get burned. It definitely burned this. And a lot of plants like this, when they get burned, it doesn't show up immediately. It kind of takes like a week or so to show up. So I put this plant outside to be watered, and I watered it and I left it outside for maybe only an hour, and it completely burned it. So I would definitely not put this in direct lighting. I also have a peperomia that was under a grow light, and it didn't really like it. What happens when you put them underneath a grow light is like this top leaf would usually get like this, and if it's like this, like completely bent like this, and it was well watered, that means that it's trying to reach away from the light. So I would definitely also not put it like directly underneath a grow light, like maybe more so like farther away from a grow light. In terms of soil, I don't really do anything special for this. I think this one is actually still in the soil that it came from the nursery. They don't really get pot bound very quickly, so you can definitely leave them in the mixture that they came in for a very long time. I'm also fertilizing this one with fish fertilizer every other week. Highly recommend Peperomia obtusifolia. Okay, so my next recommendation is for underwaters, and that is Hoyas. So this specific plant is a Hoya Crimson Princess. I love it for its variegation. So it's green on the outside and then cream white on the inside. And then when the leaves come out, they come out this bright hot pink, and then eventually it fades to like a lighter pink before fading to a cream white color. Isn't that so freaking pretty? Okay, and the reason I would recommend this for underwaters is because it really doesn't need a lot of water at all. I dry out my Hoyas completely to like 100% dry plus some, and you can see that they're doing great. So Hoyas, when I know to water it is that I look at the leaves, not the soil, because actually usually the leaves will store a lot of water. So even though the soil is dry, there's still water in the plant, so you can kind of get away with it. Very similar to what I demonstrated with the peperomia, you should try to bend the leaves closest to the base, and if they bend very easily, almost completely, and if they are wrinkly, that's when you know that you need to water your Hoyas. So unlike peperomias, Hoyas need a lot of light, and it can go under direct lighting. My Hoya currently lives directly underneath a grow light. I'll link the exact one I have down in the description below. However, if your Hoya is not currently in direct lighting, I would build up its resistance to direct lighting slowly, meaning I would put it where you want it to go for maybe like 30 minutes, and then the next day for maybe like an hour. So slowly building up its ability to handle direct lighting. If you go from like a really, really dark corner immediate to direct lighting, it might burn. But they are able to withstand direct lighting once you kind of like build up their resistance to it. So how Hoyas grow, if you can see here, they throw out this very long peduncle first. And the first time I saw that, I thought that was kind of concerning because it kind of looked like it grew this stem without leaves. But then the leaves will come from the peduncle that they throw out. So that's one leaf and that's another set of leaves that's coming out. I've never had a Hoya bloom for me, but they are super, super cool looking, and I would recommend Googling photos of what a Hoya bloom looks like. There are like thousands and thousands and thousands of different varieties of Hoyas, and they're really, really easy to like get into and feel like you need to collect them all. But I feel like once you really nail down the care for one Hoya, all the Hoyas are pretty similar in terms of care needs. So yeah, highly recommend Hoyas for people who don't like to water. Okay, so on the complete opposite end, this is what I'm going to recommend if you like to water. This is a Stramanthe Trio Star. It is not a Calathea, but the care needs for it are quite similar to a Calathea. If there are a lot of varieties of Calatheas that you want, but you've heard like, you know, really awful things about how they're so much of a diva, I would recommend you get a Stramanthe first to see if those are like care needs that you are willing to do. So it's definitely more tolerant to low humidity than Calatheas are. I have mine on my plant shelf. It's currently at 50%. But honestly, earlier this week, the humidity in this room was like 30%, and it's pretty fine. I do have some crispy edges on this plant. I feel like crispy edges and plants that, you know, like humidity is kind of just inevitable. But I actually don't think that these crispy edges have a lot to do with humidity. I think a lot of it is actually a little bit of an underwater. So my camera just cut out, but what I was saying is that I think that a lot of the crispy ends that you see on my Stramanthe is actually not from low humidity. I think it's actually from a little bit of an underwatering. Definitely went through a couple of weeks where I completely neglected all of my plants. And so this one ended up with a little bit of like a crispy edge, but I don't really mind. I feel like it's kind of inevitable if you like plants like Calatheas or Stramanthes or Marantas, and it doesn't really bother me that much. So my Stramanthe, I never let this dry out. And how I kind of balance you know, like plants that really like to dry out and plants that never like to dry out is the soil adjustment. So this Stramanthe is currently in, I think this might be peat moss. I have not repotted it from when I bought it, but it looks like 100% peat moss without any perlite, without any soil amendments whatsoever. I don't use peat moss in my house because it's not sustainable. I use coco coir, which is the outside part of a coconut that they grind up. But coco coir and peat moss in soil mixtures act very similarly. So this, because it's in 100% peat moss, it takes a very long time to dry out. So I watered this plant about once a week, and I think it is fine with that. About once a week only gets maybe the top ½ inch dry, and so it's never dry. So in terms of lighting, I would definitely say indirect lighting, absolutely no bright light. And also maybe you leaning a little bit more to medium light would be okay. So this is currently very, very close to a grow light, and I feel like it's actually getting a little bit too much light. And how you can tell is if you look at the back of the leaf. So this is what the back of the leaf should look like a very bright maroon pink, and there was a point where I put it too close to a grow light, and this is what the back of the leaf looks like. It looks like super faded. It doesn't really have like that bright pink, and the leaf that is currently coming out also looks like it's missing patches of pink on the underside of the leaf. So this might be a little bit close to a grow light, so I might want to move this soon. I don't know yet. I'll let you know what I decide to end up doing with that. I feel like once you get a groove into your Stramanthe, they actually grow pretty quickly, and so it's super rewarding to grow in your home. So my last plant recommendation should be absolutely no surprise to anyone at all if you watch my channel, and that is the string of hearts. This is the variegated variety, and I have a care video on variegated string of hearts. If you are interested in that, I'll make sure to link it up in the cards above. But the reason that I would recommend this plant is because it is a super fast grower, and so it is very rewarding to grow. I got this plant in November, and it definitely was not even like this full, and absolutely nothing was trailing. How I got it to look so full up top is that I took one of like these trailing bits and I wrapped it around the top with some bobby pins that are like cracked open. It is pretty easy to take care of, and it is super rewarding, so I would highly recommend the string of hearts. Okay, so that is all of my plant recommendations for you today. If you have other plant recommendations for intermediate plant parents, please leave them in the comments down below. If you have any further questions about these plants for me, also leave comments down below and I will be sure to get back to you on that. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!